The Giants finished the 2021 season with a 4-13 record and fired head coach Joe Judge and general manager Dave Gettleman at season's end. Quarterback Daniel Jones will enter 2022 in the most pivotal year of his young career, and this will very much determine if he will be a long-term starter for the Giants or if the new front office regime and head coach Brian Daboll want to go in a different direction. However, there are a lot more pieces on this team than just Daniel Jones, and there are a lot of things to reasonably look forward to this year in the Big Apple, or North Jersey if you want to be technical, and in today's video, we are going to break down the 2022 New York Giants and take a peek into the future as well, and without further ado, let's begin. And when looking at the 2022 New York Giants, it starts with quarterback Daniel Jones. Whether you like, love, or hate Daniel Jones, the success of the team this year will largely, but not solely, depend on his play. And that worries me, because while there have been times Daniel has certainly flashed and played like a good NFL quarterback, there's usually a play or two or three to counter that where he makes a truly awful read and it winds up as a turnover and puts the other team in good starting field position. Daniel, in a lot of ways, reminds me of Sam Darnold in that aspect. But lifetime, the Giants are 12-25 when DJ starts, and not every single loss is Daniel's fault, as sometimes, and unfortunately over the past few years, it's been a lot of times the Giants have been outmatched. And that's a big reason why I think Daboll and Shane are giving him another year to start. That, and as not as great as Daniel is at times, I don't think there'd be a better option available than him, maybe aside from trading for Jimmy G, but I think that would be a little counterintuitive. And I think the 2022 draft and how the Giants attacked the 2022 draft specifically is the start to the rebuild of what you can expect in the future. Kayvon Thibodeau has been talked about a lot recently, and I feel bad for him for how that play turned out, but 3 of their first 4 picks were spent in the trenches. The other 2 were Evan Neal at pick 7 and Joshua Azedu in the 3rd round. This is a rebuilding team, and that has to be remembered relative to their 2022 team expectations. The foundation or the nucleus of roster that Daboll and Shane are building is going to be critical for the team's long-term success, and you see that now in Buffalo, where those guys came from, working under Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, the GM and head coach of the Bills. Players like Dion Dawkins, Mitch Morse, Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, and now Von Miller, of course, in free agency, have all been prioritized by the front office to either keep around or to invest high draft picks in, and the thing to remember with Buffalo when comparing them to the New York Giants is this took a couple of years to build. They had the 9th overall draft pick in 2019 after finishing Josh Allen's rookie season with a 6-10 record, then spent their first 2 picks in the trenches on Ed Oliver and Cody Ford. So come full circle, I don't expect the New York Giants to make the playoffs in 2022, and I do believe most Giants fans would acknowledge it is unlikely they are a top 7 team in the NFC this year, especially when they were smoked by a few playoff teams last year when Daniel Jones was healthy, by the way, like a 38-11 loss to the LA Rams and like a 30-10 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And when looking at the 2022 Giants schedule, it's honestly not too difficult. And yes, of course, there are difficult games on the schedule, but looking at the first 8 games of the year, and for anyone new to the team breakdowns, we won't go into each and every game, and it is more of a glance at the schedule, but it's not unreasonable to think this team can be 4-4 at their Week 9 bye, with presumable wins over Carolina, Chicago, Jacksonville, and Seattle, then win against the Texans and Lions coming off the bye, and have this team be 6-4 through 10 games. After that, the schedule gets a little tougher for the G-men, but all things considered, a lot of these are winnable. And what I think may be tough for the Giants is they could very easily win 8 games, maybe even 9 games with this schedule. Will they is another question, of course, but in a loaded draft class next year, especially at the quarterback position, which features the likes of CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Tyler Van Dyke, and Will Levis, And within this, especially if the Giants do win 8 or 9 games, which again is possible, I think GM Joe Schoen and head coach Brian Daboll would get together and say, look, we have 4 years of Daniel Jones to realize this guy isn't awful, but he's certainly not the long-term franchise quarterback that we want. But we won too many games in 2022 in a year that we ended up missing the playoffs because we didn't get to 10 wins, and now we have a very tough decision of, do we wait and see how the draft plays out for us, or do we make a 49ers style trade up like when they went up to get Trey Lance, which would also sacrifice a couple of the team's future first round picks? We have yet to really dive into a player that's pretty polarizing within the Giants fan base, and that's running back Saquon Barkley. Saquon was selected number 2 overall back in 2018, and a big reason why he is pretty polarizing is, of course, drafting a running back at number 2 overall, then only 5 picks later, seeing the Bills' success that they've had with Josh Allen, and in 4 years, fair or not, Saquon has been underwhelming as a former top 2 pick. And what's really unfortunate for him is the injuries, and especially how they happened. In 2019, he missed a few games due to rolling his ankle against the Buccaneers, and guys, I'm not a doctor, nor do I claim to be one, but he had a 230-plus pound man roll onto his ankle. At that point, that's out of Saquon's control, and there's nothing he could have done in that situation to prevent that specific injury. It's football. Injuries are going to happen, and the same kind of applies for 2020 when he tore his ACL. Unfortunately, in the NFL now, torn ACLs happen. And even if Saquon has a healthy and successful 2022 season, I personally don't think the Giants are going to extend Saquon long term, due in some part to the injury concerns with Saquon, again, fair or not, and the concept of paying a running back, and we'll say this conservatively, but $10+ million per year. Then we would get into the guarantees and everything, and with this team preview of the New York Giants, I do think 2022 is the final year we will see both Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley in Giants uniforms. Despite the uncertainty around the quarterback and running back position, the Giants have several good young pieces on the roster, and that includes second-year player Azeez Ojulari. Azeez had 8 sacks in his rookie season, and a big reason why this is encouraging is pass rush is generally a position that takes a little longer to develop than most. It's not uncommon to see receivers come in and dominate fairly early in their career, think Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, or even Jalen Waddle on a little lesser of an example, but it is significantly more rare for a pass rusher to have a truly dominant rookie season, and Azeez wasn't overly dominant by any means, but pairing him now with a healthy Kayvon Thibodeau, at least when he becomes healthy, is an exciting duo for Giants fans and something they have been missing for quite a while now. There is a reason pass rush or edge or defensive end is one of the premier positions in football, and a reason why those guys go early in the draft, and often, and a reason why they get paid a hefty chunk of change. Because if you can routinely get after the opposing quarterbacks, you can make his life hell. And that's the ultimate goal of what Azeez and KT will be trying to do for some time. Both players are 22 or younger, and the sky is truly the limit for these guys, and if you're a Giants fan, it's hard not to get excited about this part of the team, knowing what you have there. And that segues us into another young player in the defense the Giants have, and that's third-year safety Xavier McKinney. Xavier had a very good season in 2021 as he finished the year with 5 interceptions, including a pick 6 and over 90 tackles. And why having a good pass rush led by Azeez and KT benefits Xavier is the quicker these guys get to the quarterback, the quicker the quarterback has to get the football out of his hands, and at times a pressure is as good as a sack because it forces a ball into a very tight window, then becomes a tipped ball, which then becomes an interception for the defense. And the Giants finished the season with the second fewest points scored on offense, which a lot of that can be attributed to Jake Fromm and Mike Glennon starting games for this team. And having a better quarterback play 17 games this year, and Daniel Jones, if he does play all 17 games, will to a degree benefit the defense if, and this is a big if for Daniel, if he can keep the turnovers in check. The longer the offense stays on the field, the better for the defense, because these guys need to stay fresh over the course of a game, and time of possession is a critical stat for team success, and oftentimes teams that have a high offensive time of possession are more successful because of that. So while I'm not the highest on the 2022 New York Giants, I like the principles that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are installing and the long-term outlook of this team. Ultimately, I think they miss the playoffs this year and have a new quarterback next year, but there will be a lot to build on in 2023 for the New York Football Giants. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We recently hit 43,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.